At my dad's birthday celebration, my mom kicked the chair my 6-year-old daughter was sitting on and yelled, "Go eat while standing. This seat is for my real grandchild." My dad's unexpected reaction stunned my mom and everyone present. A month later, I handed my mother a paper that made her regret everything. "Hey, read it. I used to think family cruelty was loud shouting, slamming doors, fists banging on tables. I was wrong. Sometimes it comes quietly in a single action or sentence directed at a child who doesn't understand why she's being singled out." My dad's birthday party was meant to be simple, nothing extravagant, just family, food, and a cake that said 65 and still bossy in blue icing. My daughter had helped me choose a gift weeks before and was excited in a way only kids can be: pure, hopeful, unguarded. She wore a yellow dress with tiny white flowers and her hair was styled in 2 neat braids. She kept asking, "Mama, can I sit next to Grandpa?" I agreed, wishing I hadn't made that promise. When we arrived, the dining room was already packed. A long table, extra chairs pulled from bedrooms and garages. The adults took their usual places without a second thought. My daughter climbed onto an empty chair in the middle. She sat carefully, hands folded in her lap as I had taught her, and smiled at my dad. Before anyone could speak, my mother kicked the chair, not hard enough to topple it, just enough to scrape loudly against the floor. My daughter's body lurched forward, her eyes wide with shock. My mother didn't even glance at her, she stared at me and then shouted for the whole room to hear, "Go eat standing up. This seat is for my real grandchild." The room froze. Forks halted mid-bite. Someone cleared their throat, and another person laughed awkwardly, as if it had to be a joke. My daughter didn't cry, she just slowly slid off the chair, confusion etched on her face. "Mama," she whispered. I stood up so quickly that my knees hit the table. "What did you just say?" I demanded. My mother crossed her arms. "You heard me." My dad remained seated, silent. My daughter stood there, small and quiet, clutching her plate as if it might drop. "I didn't know I did something wrong," she said softly. That sentence shattered me. I took her plate, set it down, and knelt in front of her. "You did nothing wrong," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "Nothing at all." I turned to my parents. "You need to apologize to her now." My mother scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." Dramatic? That word had followed me my whole childhood. I looked at my dad, hoping he would say something, anything. Instead, he stared at his cake, and that silence spoke volumes. "I'm taking my daughter home," I declared. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Fine. Take your attitude with you." As we left, my daughter buried her face in my shoulder. "I wanted Grandpa to see me eat," she whispered. I couldn't respond. The car ride home was too quiet. At home, I tucked her into bed early. She clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter than usual. "Mama," she asked softly, "am I not real?" My heart broke. "You are real," I said, holding her face in my hands. "You are more real than anything in that room." She nodded, pretending to understand, but kids always grasp more than we think. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the moment over and over, the sound of the chair, the words, and my father's silence. I realized something painful: this wasn't new, it was just the first time it affected my child. In the following weeks, my parents acted as if nothing had happened. They sent texts about groceries and photos from family dinners we weren't invited to. My mother messaged, "Kids shouldn't be so sensitive. Builds character." I stopped replying. A month later, my mother requested to meet. "Just you," she said. I already knew why. We met at a small cafe. She arrived with her purse tightly held and lips pressed together. "You've been distant," she said. "You kicked a chair out from under my child," I replied calmly. She rolled her eyes. "That again?" I took a deep breath. This time, I didn't raise my voice. I reached into my bag and slid a single piece of paper across the table. She frowned. "What's this?" "Read it," I said. She did, and I watched her expression shift from confusion to fear and then something resembling panic. Her hands began to shake. "This isn't funny," she said. "I know," I replied. "Neither was what you did." She looked at me, eyes wide. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did," I said. She left without finishing her coffee. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty, but I knew this wasn't over because my dad still hadn't spoken. The paper I handed her wasn't just a warning, it was the start of consequences. I thought giving her that paper would be the hardest part, but my father's reaction and what followed would change our family forever. In the weeks after my dad's birthday party, I realized something unsettling: the memory wasn't fading, not for me and definitely not for my daughter. She didn't openly discuss it, but the change was subtle and constant, like a low hum in the background of our lives. She paused before sitting anywhere unfamiliar, waited for permission even when it wasn't needed, and watched adults' faces too closely, preparing herself for disappointment before it could arrive. That broke my heart more than the moment itself, because the chair wasn't the deepest wound. The message was, "You don't belong unless someone allows you to." I refused to let that lesson take root in her. One evening, about 2 weeks after everything happened, my daughter came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. "Mama," she asked, "did Grandma kick the chair because she doesn't like me or because she doesn't like you?" The question hit harder than any accusation. I turned off the water and dried my hands slowly, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes," I said, kneeling down to meet her gaze, "people hurt others because they never learned how to manage their own feelings." She thought about that. "So it wasn't my fault?" "No," I said firmly. "It was never your fault." She nodded, satisfied, but I knew that understanding would need to be reinforced again and again through action. My parents didn't reach out right away, and for once, I didn't chase them. That was new for me. In the past, I would have tried to smooth things over, sent messages explaining myself, offered compromises I didn't owe. I had been conditioned to keep the peace even when it came at the cost of my dignity. But motherhood changes something deep within. I wasn't willing to exchange my child's sense of worth for anyone's comfort, not even my parents'. About a month later, my father requested to meet again. This time I agreed on my terms: a public place, clear boundaries, no child present. When I arrived, he was already there, stirring a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. "I've been thinking about my childhood," he said after a long pause. That surprised me. "No one protected me either," he admitted. "I just learned to normalize it." I nodded. "That's how cycles continue," I said. "Until someone stops them." He looked at me, eyes tired but clear. "You stopped it." I didn't feel pride, I felt responsibility. A few days later, my mother sent a message. It wasn't an apology, it was a demand. "I want to see my granddaughter. You can't keep her from me." I read it 3 times before typing my response: "You don't have access to someone you refuse to respect." She replied almost instantly, "You're cruel." I didn't respond because cruelty is humiliating a child, boundaries are protection. Time did what arguments never could: it created distance. And in that distance, my daughter began to reclaim herself. She laughed louder, spoke up when something bothered her, and stopped asking whether she was allowed to take up space. One afternoon, she said something that made me pause mid-step. "Mama, if someone says something mean, I can tell you, right?" "Yes," I said immediately. "And you won't tell me to ignore it?" "No," I replied. "I'll listen." She smiled. "Good, because ignoring hurts more." That sentence stuck with me. Eventually, my father came back into our lives in a limited way. He respected boundaries, corrected himself, and showed up quietly without entitlement. My mother did not. She framed herself as the victim to anyone who would listen, telling relatives I had changed, that I was cold, that I had turned against the family. For the first time, I didn't defend myself because those who truly knew me and my daughter saw the truth without needing an explanation. Nearly a year after the incident, my daughter had a school event. Parents sat in folding chairs while kids stood on a small stage. When it was time to sit, she hesitated for just a moment, then confidently walked to an empty chair in the front row. She sat down without asking, without shrinking, without fear. Tears burned my eyes, not because of what she'd lost, but because of what she'd reclaimed. Later that night, while I tucked her in, she asked, "Mama, why don't we go to Grandma's house anymore?" I gently brushed her hair back. "Because some places aren't safe for our hearts," I said. She considered that. "Okay," she replied. "I like our house better." So did I. Children don't need perfect families, they need safe ones. They don't remember who hosted the party or who sat at the head of the table. They remember who protected them when they were too small to protect themselves. Cruelty doesn't have to be loud to be damaging. Silence doesn't have to be violent to be harmful. And love that demands a child shrink is not love, it's control. Choosing your child over tradition, reputation, or comfort is not selfish, it is necessary because a child who knows they are worthy will never need permission to sit at the table.